church. We invite you to stand and worship with us. Amen. Amen. Coming on the clouds,
everything changes. Darkness starts to tremble at the light that you bring in when you walk into the room. Every heart starts burning. Nothing matters more than just to sit here at your feet and worship you. We worship you. We love you, and we'll never stop. We can't live without you, Jesus. We love you, and we can't get enough. All this is for you, Jesus. Into the room, sickness starts to vanish. Every hopeless situation ceases to exist. And when you walk into the room, the dead begin to rise, 'cause there is resurrection life in all you do. We love you. Consume, God, all we are. We give you permission. Our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. So come and consume, God, all we are. We give you permission. Our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. So come and consume, God, all we are. We give you permission, our hearts are yours, we want you. Oh, we want you. So come and consume, God, all we are. Yeah, we give you permission, our hearts. Oh, we want you, 'cause we love you. We love you. And we'll never stop. We can't live without you. is all for you, Jesus. Just sing his name.
A thousand generations, you are worthy, Lord of all. And unto you, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all. this morning. Highest praise, highest praises, Lord. Highest praise, highest praise, highest praises, highest praises. You deserve the highest praise, highest praise, highest praises, Lord. Be enthroned, so be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all. And unto you, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all. Be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all. Unto you, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all. Highest praise, highest praises, Lord. Highest praise, highest praises, Lord. Would you just lift your hands with me this morning? Let's sing this out together and worship Him. Highest praises, Lord of all. Highest praise, highest praises. You are worthy, Lord of all. Be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all. And unto you, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all. Oh, you're worthy, God. We worship you. So be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all. And unto you, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all. 'Cause this is how I fight my battles. 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 This is how I fight. Let's sing this again. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight. is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight. And this is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight.
I just feel the Lord is wanting us to just soak in His presence for a little longer this morning. I feel the Holy Spirit speaking to us that His favor is upon our lives. That He sees us not just another person, He sees us as individuals. And He's pouring out His affection on us right now. He's saying to every single one of us, I got your back. I got your back. You don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be anxious. I've got your back. And not just you corporately, but you individually. He knows you by name. You're not just one life out of trillions of life on this planet. You are you. He knows you by name. He calls you by name. Even right now, He's saying, I got your back. And I love you and I like you. His favor shines upon you. And just receive it in the midst of this. In the midst of our busyness, in the midst of chaos in our nation, in the midst of uncertainty. God's saying, just relax, son or daughter. My favor shines upon you. And I got your back. I'm surrounding you right now. Let me fight this battle. So we can just take a sign of relief. Just do it with me. Just release that to the Lord. Amen. 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 Hey, welcome to Living Stones Church. Doesn't that feel a lot better? My name is Pastor Andrew. I'm so glad to worship you this morning. Pastor Ron is ministering in North Carolina today. He sends his love. He sends his greeting. He sent me a text this morning. First of all, I just want to kind of be real. This week is, I'm sure for many of you, has been a tough week. Started out with the horrific, tragic death of George Floyd, and then expanded the rest of this week into, I feel like our nation is literally burning. And Pastor Ron is going to address this issue on our podcast this coming Thursday. We're inviting Amar Pendayenge, who was at first service. He's one of our elders who's joined us for this podcast. I spoke to Amar about 40 minutes on the phone yesterday. And man, it was such a great conversation. I just talked to him for another half an hour after first service. I'm telling you, I normally don't say this. You cannot miss this podcast. I learned so much talking to Amra. There's such wisdom there. There's things that in our season, in what God's doing in our nation, we all need to listen and hear. We're going to post that on Thursday on Pastor Ron's Facebook page. I will share, of course, on the church Facebook page. Please watch it. It's going to be really, really good. And next week, Pastor Ron will be back and continue on our current series moving forward. Pastor Ron's going to talk about what is the church's role in the midst of everything we're going through right now. But I do want to share a word of encouragement. You guys want to get encouraged this morning? I need some encouragement. Anybody else need some encouragement? I'm jumping ahead on my message I want to share this morning. But you know when Moses saw the burning bush, right? Everybody remember the burning bush on Mount Sinai? Yes? Everyone with me? Yes, the burning bush, right? I read some commentary. It says the Bible says that Moses was drawn to the burning bush not because it was burning, okay? Apparently, it's pretty common in the desert for things to just kind of burn, okay? But he was drawn to the burning bush because even though it was burning, it was not consumed. Does that make sense? It was not burning up. And I felt the Lord just really spoke to my heart. That was a picture of what God wanted Moses to be like. But not just Moses, but every single one of us, okay? The fire is going to come, okay? The fire is going to come. Even now in our nation, we've been through several different fires. We'll continue to go through fire. We're going through the squeeze. But I feel the Lord saying to us, when you walk with Jesus, okay, even though we're all going to get burned. But when you walk with Jesus, we will be burned, but we won't be consumed, okay? Instead, we'll be purified. Remember the friends of Daniel? When they're thrown to the furnace? And the king looked in there. He's like, there's one more person in there. He looks like the Son of Man because they were walking with Jesus. So here's an encouragement. As long as we're walking with Jesus, we're in step with Jesus. Doesn't matter what the world throws at us. Doesn't matter what injustice or whatever happens. We will not be burned because we're walking with Jesus. And that ties into our message today. You know, we've been going through this message called Moving Forward. Lessons learned from the life of Moses. This has been the heart message of a passion area of my life. Basically, we've been talking about how do you move forward in the time of uncertainty, which we've experienced from the COVID-19 and continuing this week. And I am going to talk about this topic, which I would call the divine reset. The divine reset. Let me just give you a preface what I think about when I think about the word reset. Okay, so show the next picture. Are you guys familiar with that picture? So my computer and I in my office, and I have a love-hate relationship. I love it when it does what it's supposed to do. I hate it when it doesn't. Okay, it's very simple. When I tells it to open up this file and it says, nope, I don't feel like it today. Or when he says, I'm not going to open up this web page. Oh my, I'm about to lose it. I'm like, do your job. So I quickly reach for the reset button, or in my computer, I don't have a reset button. I have to actually click on something. And I reset the computer. And the purpose of me resetting the computer is to restore the computer to its original purpose, its original format, to go back to doing what it's supposed to do. Does that make sense? That's what I call a reset, okay? Apparently, this type of reset happens naturally in our lives, okay? It happens over and over again. Maybe people have found a new passion or a new direction in their life. So they're going one direction, and one day they're like, no, I'm reset and going in a different direction. Maybe your circumstance or tragedies cause people to go in a different direction. I got a couple examples here. You know, Jeff Bezos, you guys heard of him before? He had a striving career on Wall Street. And one day on his cross-country trip across America to Seattle, driving to Seattle, he came up with this little business plan called Amazon.com. Okay, the rest is history. So at 30 years old, he decided to reset his life and go in a complete different direction. Okay, I thought this example was interesting. You guys know Julia Child, right? Julia Child, cookbook, all that stuff. Well, in her first life, she actually worked for an organization which eventually became the CIA. Okay, did you know that? But at 49 years old, she wrote her first cookbook. Okay. And I got a couple other examples. Martha Stewart was a fashion model, and then after she had kids, she switched careers and started a gourmet empire. Ronald Reagan was an actor, and in his 50s, he ran for governor of California, eventually became president. This type of things happen all the time, okay? Natural resets. But what I'm talking about today is not the natural reset. I'm talking about the divine reset. And to me, these are resets that come from the heart of God. What is the purpose of these resets? The purpose of the divine reset is like the same reason I reset my computer, okay? It's to align us with the original purpose we were made to do. Does that make sense? It's like you go into a chiropractor and they're realigning your back, okay? So that you can function again, so you can do what you're supposed to do again. Now, I have a couple disclaimer about the divine reset. The divine reset is not a curse, even though often it feels like one. Okay? You guys know what I mean. The divine reset does not mean you're going backwards from God's perspective, but in your own head, in your own eyes, you definitely sometimes feel like you're going backwards or getting demoted. The divine reset is not to shame us, embarrass us, or to harm us, even though sometimes we feel that way. The purpose of divine reset is for God to say, hey, I got to get you aligned with my calling for you so you can truly enjoy life and live life fully, okay? It comes from the heart of God. Now, the divine reset comes in forms that are not very pleasant often. It may come in the form of a financial breakdown or maybe a bankruptcy. It could be loss of a job or loss of a loved one, loss of a relationship. There could be a displacement in which you lose your routine, you lose your friends, you lose everything you're familiar with. It could come in the form of a global pandemic that shuts everything down. But the bottom line is when God is hitting the reset button in your life, you feel disoriented, you feel lost, your life is disrupted, and you are forced to change, and it is uncomfortable. But I want to remind you, the point of this is for God to align you to Himself. And this is not a one-time thing. Over and over again, God used divine resets to adjust the trajectory of our lives. Does that make sense? You're going one direction, you're like, man, I love this direction. God's like, I'm going to adjust you. And it is not, it's uncomfortable. We're not used to it. We don't like it. But the purpose is to adjust us to where we're supposed to go. Now, today I'm going to talk about the divine reset in Moses' life. Okay, where we last left off from last week, Moses was about to enter into a divine reset. You know, Moses had the nice career thing going on in Egypt. He was a prince. He lived in the palace. I'm sure he was comfortable. It was the things that he was used to. He had his routines. But as we seen last week, you know, when he saw his people being oppressed, he killed and murdered the Egyptian that was oppressing his people. He hid the body, but then through this whole experience, Pharaoh found out he was trying to kill Moses, and Moses had to flee into the desert, okay? God was taking Moses through, whether he knows it or not, whether he likes it or not, God was taking Moses through a divine reset through the desert, okay? If you study the Bible enough, you know that God takes people through the desert all the time, through the wilderness all the time, okay? Going through the wilderness, going through the desert is what God does. But the purpose is not to hurt us, okay? The purpose is to grow us. If you're going through the desert right now, you feel like you're going through the wilderness right now, this message is for you. For in the life of Moses, we are going to learn 6 principles in which you will not just survive, but you are going to thrive in the season of divine reset. You know, I started working on this message 2 or 3 weeks ago because I over-prepare. So I didn't know everything that was going to happen this week. But as I was preparing this message, I was preparing the context because right now myself, my wife, we're going through some divine resets that's really shaking us. Okay, and the friends around us, some of the closest friends, are also going through this divine reset. But I talked to Pastor Ron, and I said, Pastor Ron, I'm not sure this message will apply to our greater church body because I feel like it's very personal to me. And Pastor Ron reminded me that we're still going through this global pandemic. There's a lot of resets going on. But further, he reminded me that if you are called of God, if God has a purpose for you in your life, you will have to go through a divine reset. God will take you through the desert. You might be in the middle of one right now. You might be in the process of exiting one, or you might be in the process of going into one. Regardless, we all need to understand. We all need to set the proper expectation of how to navigate through the divine reset. Does that make sense? So I'm hoping you perk your ears to listen to these principles. I'm not just preaching at you, I'm preaching to myself. Okay? These principles will help you thrive in this season. So the first principle of the divine reset is to embrace the change. In Exodus chapter 2, verse 15, when Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. So to me, embracing this divine reset is by far the hardest step. It's the number one step. It's the hardest step. Very few people, I don't know about you, but very few people voluntarily goes into the desert because they want to, okay? I don't know anyone who's like, hey, God, I'm ready to go for a divine reset. I'm ready to embrace the uncomfortable. That often doesn't happen. We are often forced into the divine reset, okay? Often forced by things we don't like, maybe by injustice or tragedy or things that happen that's outside of our control, okay? It is our human nature to resist change, okay? Is that just me? I don't like it when someone tries to change me, okay? It's our human nature to do that. I especially don't like it if the force that's changing me, that I feel like is changing me, is bad or is brought upon by injustice. Look at look at Moses' case. His exile into the reset was brought upon by this evil king that was oppressing his people, okay? I'm sure Moses didn't like this change that was brought upon him. But wisdom says, let's look deeper into the situation. Who is really behind this change? Who is really behind this pressure? Okay. What is this change? What is this squeezing really doing to our hearts? Is it making me more like Jesus? Is it giving me opportunity to examine in my life where I have blind spots, or maybe the character flaws or the issues of selfishness in my heart that I haven't faced in a long time because I just didn't want to or I was too lazy to? What fruit is being produced by this squeezing? You know, just last week, I had some news dropped upon me that was very unpleasant and it's taking me to another reset. I can sense this reset coming again. In the midst of this, I was unhappy. I felt injustice in my heart. But what I did was I called up my buddy, Tim, and I said, hey, Tim, I need some help. I feel like this is happening, and I need some perspective. I need some third-person perspective because I'm too close to this issue, okay? Do you sense this is God doing something in my life, or is it just like something I got to resist? And Tim brought me counsel. He was outside my bubble, my emotional bubble. He can say to me, hey, Andrew, you just talked about needing to learn this character last week, and this is what God is doing in you right now. So he gave me the third-person perspective, the good counsel to help me say, hey, this is not circumstance. This is God. Does that make sense? We all need men and women of God who loves us to be able to give us that perspective and to say, yeah, this is not right what happened, but look beyond that because God is the one that's squeezing you. This is important because when you realize God is behind this divine reset, what we need to do is we need to embrace it. We need to embrace the change, which is some of the hardest thing we can never do. I don't know about you, but I've been described as being stubborn a couple times in my life. In other words, I don't like to change. I set my expectation for a certain way to do things, and you might even have a better way. You might have a much more efficient way. I just don't like changing. I don't like changing just for the sake of not changing. Does that make sense? I'm a traditionalist. And then that's good on some things, and it's really, really bad on other things. And what the hardest thing for me is to change, is to allow myself to say, I am going to change my expectation because God is trying to make me better and do things in my heart. This is why we need to go through the reset. You know, when I was 28 years old, over a decade ago, I came out to Northwest Indiana from Virginia. I grew up in Virginia. And I came out here because I knew that I need a divine reset. I didn't know the term, but I knew something had to change. And when I first came out here, I lived with Pastor Ron. Well, I lived with him for 4 years. And it wasn't the first time God tried to reset my life, but it was the first time I had to learn to embrace it. Does that make sense? God's always trying to change us and reset us, but we often reject it. But this is the first time I start to embrace it. But in the beginning, I was super, super uncomfortable. I'll give you a couple examples how I was uncomfortable. For example, I was a 28-year-old, okay, and I shared a bedroom with an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm not even joking, right? Johnny, you were the 4-year-old at the time. I mean, this is a long time ago. Look at how big he is now. But, it was uncomfortable. No knock on the 4 and 8-year-old. The knock is on the 28-year-old, but it was uncomfortable. I grew up having my own room since I was a little kid. And I didn't know anybody. The weather was too cold. I couldn't find good Chinese food. I couldn't find a job. That's another thing. It took me 6 months. I kept looking for a job. I was used to having my own job. I used to making money. I couldn't find a job. I was applying for jobs. I applied for those. First, I applied for those jobs that I'm like barely qualified for, like shooting for the moon, like hoping that I'll get a hit. Nothing. Then I start applying for jobs I feel like I'm qualified for. Heard nothing. Then I start applying for jobs and I'm like, I'm definitely qualified for this. Heard nothing. After 2 or 3 months of this, I felt the Lord starting to speak to me. He says, look, I'm trying to do something, okay? I'm trying to do something in your life. This is not about you applying for a job. I'm trying to do something. He is starting the process to purge some of the issues in my heart. He's starting to hit that reset button in my life. And I'm starting to be awakened to, like, something's happening here. I, for once in my life, start to realize I need to change. Now, the honest truth is I want to emotionally check out. Many times I just want to pack everything in my car and just leave. It was too hard for me, okay? I did not want to change. But I look back at the first 28 years of my life and I said, I cannot go back there. You ever been there before? This path is really hard, but you look back, you're just like, I can't go back there. I can't go back there. So you know what? The first time in my life, I embrace my reset. I embrace my reset. You know, there are times in which I come home from work and I have like 14 things. I come home, I go get the mail. And of course, I don't know about you, but when I get the mail and there's like a couple bill in there or there's like a weird thing like, hey, something from the IRS, the first thing I want to do is open that up as soon as I can, right? And my wife, of course, comes in and she's like, hey, I need a hug. I see you, I want a hug. There's different ways I can respond to that request for embrace, okay? And unfortunately, often I give her the like, I'll stand still and keep opening this mail and you can just kind of embrace me, like you're embracing a tree. And that's often what we do. I'm not saying that's good. That's not good marriage counseling. But often we're like that when God is embracing us with this reset. But now after a few years later, I've learned, whatever I'm thinking in my mind, whatever I need to do, drop everything. My wife's embracing me. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to embrace her back. Okay? Embrace her back. And that's what I want to ask you guys to do. If you are about to enter into a divine reset, I know it's difficult, but I want to ask you to embrace back. Okay? Embrace back. So that's the first step. Embrace the change. The second step, or second thing to learn from Moses is to hold on to your dreams. See, in the season of reset, you might have to surrender your comforts, surrender your selfishness, your routines, your behaviors, your character issues. But one thing you don't surrender, you don't let go, is the dreams and the passions that God has placed in your heart. Sometimes when we're in the middle of a reset, we often, this happens a lot, I've done it in my own life, we just give up on everything. You just say, well, I guess God doesn't want me anyway. I guess God doesn't want to use me. I guess God doesn't really care. We throw the baby literally out with the bathwater in those cases. We just sit down, we pout, and become a victim. Okay? Don't confuse an adjustment with rejection. Okay? My son is in this phase of fighting rejection a lot right now. My 6-year-old son, Nehemiah, he's in the overflow. So whenever he's doing something, I try to give him an adjustment. Okay? For example, he's cleaning up. I'm like, oh, son, you can do it quicker if you bring this with you or whatever it is. When I give him adjustment, often he takes it as a rejection. He will literally hide. He will like walk in the other room and hide. Okay, and I had to bring him back and say, son, look, I'm trying to help you. This is not a rejection. I'm not even rebuking you. I'm just adjusting you so you can do it better. And I want to encourage you guys, as we're going through this reset, you got to keep in mind, don't confuse adjustment with rejection so that you give up on your dreams and the passion that God has placed in your heart. Look at what happened to Moses in verse 16. You know, the priest of Midian has 7 daughters. They came to draw water and fill the trough to water the father's flock. And shepherds came and basically bullied them, okay? But long story short, basically Moses stood up to these shepherds and helped these ladies drew water for them. And Reuel, the father, asked his daughter, why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat. Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, I have become a foreigner in a foreign land. You see, Moses is a reformer at heart. In his heart, when he sees injustice, he just can't handle it. He's like, I got to do something, okay? Yeah, he got kicked out of Egypt for it, but he wasn't changing. He held on to that fundamental part in his heart that's a reformer. So later, when he saw this thing happen at the well, he's like, I can't handle it. I got to do something. I got to make a difference. And because of his activism, okay, God opened door to the Midianites. He got a wife out of it. But check this out. Notice what he named his son. I don't know about you, but when I named my firstborn, all my kids, but especially my firstborn, I thought for months what I was going to name my son. I feel like what you name your firstborn child says a lot about you. Parents, I don't know if you guys agree. I think a good trivia question would be like, what did you name your firstborn kid and why? I think it says a lot about your heart. And check out what Moses named his son. He named his son Gershom, okay, which means foreigner or sojourner. Okay, what this tells me is that Moses, even though he's with the Midianites, his heart is back in Egypt. Okay, it means that he still has a longing and a passion and a desire in his heart to go back to Egypt and liberate his people. That's always been in his heart. So even though he's 40, it took him 40 years to complete this journey, Moses is still not giving up. In this season of reset, he held on to this passion in his heart. I'm telling you, if God has placed the passion and the desire in your heart to minister, to love, to care, to reform, whatever it is, don't let it die. God will come back to it one day. He will come back to it one day. In my season of reset, I told you 4 years I lived with Pastor Ron. I've always had a heart for ministry. I've always had a heart to preach, to teach, to love, to care, to disciple, to lead. I've done it all throughout my life. I led in college ministry. I led a youth pastor after college. I was a missionary for a couple years. But when I first came out to Indiana for the first couple years, I did nothing. There was no ministry. But it was still burning in my heart. What happened was that when I saw other people do ministry, there was a jealousy in my heart. Not an evil jealousy, not like, oh, I wish you fail. But there's a stirring in my heart that says, oh man, I so long for that. I so long to teach. I so long to lead. I so long for that. But you know what I did with that desire is I didn't bury it. I hid it in my heart. There's a difference. I didn't bury it. I hid it. Because I knew one day, if God has placed that in my heart, it's God's job one day to dig it back up, to restore it, and bring it to pass. So I want to encourage you, if you're going through a reset right now, okay, don't confuse you're not ready yet with you'll never get there, okay? It's just not time yet. Those desires and those passions in your heart, okay, hide it in your heart, don't bury it. So that's the second lesson, is you hold on to those desires God's given you. Lesson number 3, learn and grow as much as you can. Okay, Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Do you guys remember the algebra class back in the 7th grade when someone, maybe it was you, raised your hand and said, Miss So-and-so, when are we ever going to use this material? Right? Someone inevitably is going to ask that question. Well, if you're going through a divine reset, welcome back to 7th grade, because I guarantee you are going to be put in situations in which you're going to ask yourself, okay, you're going to ask God, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? How am I ever going to use this task or this information or this knowledge you're putting before you? Look at Moses. He was a prince. In his mind, he just received the greatest emotion. He became a shepherd. In the Middle Eastern hierarchy, the shepherd was the lowest on the totem pole, okay? And check it out. It wasn't even his own sheep. He was serving his father-in-law, so he was just a higher hand. In his mind, he just took a huge step backwards. But looking from God's perspective, what was he doing in Moses? Well, maybe Moses was learning how to shepherd sheep, because one day he will be shepherding millions of not sheep, but God's people. Maybe he's learning how to pastor people a little better. Maybe he needs to learn to be a little less frustrated and a little less edgy in his anger, right? And why is Moses learning how to navigate through the wilderness and the desert to find water and to find shelter and all those practical things about how to survive in the desert? Maybe because one day he's got to lead over millions of his own people through the wilderness into the promised land. See, you just don't know why these things happen. in the season, it's our temptation to despise, to denigrate, to condescend to these seemingly small tasks or battles that we have, that God puts before us. We're like, man, I'm so much above this. This is so beneath me. I'm telling you, these same tasks or routines or battles or jobs, literal jobs, are the very instrument that God uses to change you, okay? If you push it off, you're just prolonging the season of reset. Embrace these lessons. Embrace this journey. You know, in my season of reset, I talked about how I was looking for a job for 6 months. So I got more and more desperate. So eventually I'm like, I just need a job. I just need something to do. So I applied to be a substitute teacher at Crown Point Schools. Okay, it was a tough time for me. I don't really enjoy it. The problem with substitute teaching is when people first see you, the kids love you because they think they're doing nothing, right? Substitute teacher, today is an off day. We're not doing anything. But I actually want to do my job, so I'm actually making them do something. So they went from like loving to see me to hating me real quickly. So it was just not my favorite thing to do to be a substitute teacher. But this job opened up the door for me to teach at the alternate school, to actually get a full-time teaching job at the alternate school in Crown Point Schools. And a few years later, I ended up becoming the lead teacher at Crown Point Schools. And man, you know, I thought as a student, I hated going to school. As a teacher, I hated going to school even more. Now, disclaimer, Crown Point School had some great people. I met some great people. I love the people I work with. But the job itself was just a tough job. It was really hard for my personality. Ideally, I don't have the right personality for that job. It's very interesting why God gave me that job. It pushed me, it challenged me, it molded me, it pushed my buttons. I mean, I dealt with things I never wanted to deal with, situations I never wanted to be put in. Like, I would literally complain, whine, and cry to my wife every Sunday night. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school the next day. Why do I have to go to school? I mean, you think as a student you hated school. Talk to the teacher, right? But she encouraged me. She says, Andrew, you don't understand. You can't even see that throughout these years of teaching at this alt school, you have become so much more patient. You have become so much more kind, less of a jerk, less edgy, better listener. I can't even tell because I'm just in the grind, you know. I'm in the furnace. I'm being burned up. But she, from her perspective, could see what was happening in me. You know, it's interesting because I thought the alt school was like 1 or 2 years of just like a placeholder, okay, before I move on to the next thing. I was there for 10 years, 1 whole decade, because God saw it fit that I needed at least 10 years to start becoming this path to become a pastor. Turns out the alt school had the perfect tools to change me, to prepare me for what I'm doing right now. And here's the other interesting part. I don't know if I learned all the lessons at the alt school, because there are times at the alt school, I'm like, I'm checked out. I'm like, I don't even want to learn. I don't even want to push. And I look back, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I learned all the lessons I can. And now I don't have a chance to learn that anymore. Does that make sense? I want to encourage you in the middle of your reset. Don't despise the tasks and the jobs you've been given right now. Because when you're out of this season, you no longer have an opportunity to learn those same lessons. Embrace those lessons right now. So lesson number 3. Learn and grow as much as you can. Number 4, don't focus on the exit. If you're going through this reset, this is your strongest temptation. When is all this going to be over? When can I go back to my status quo again? When can I be comfortable again? When can I just rest again? When can I do blah, blah, blah again? You are undermining this whole journey and process, because the whole purpose of this journey, this reset, is to change you so you have a new normal. You have a new habit, new changes in your heart. Does that make sense? We need to be focused not on the exit. Look at Moses. Okay, he was in the wilderness for 40 years. Imagine if he just did nothing and waited. He would have wasted 40 years of his life. He wouldn't have got married. He wouldn't have kids. He wouldn't have learned and grown. And he would never see the exit sign that God has placed in his way. Check out what the exit sign is. You know, we talked about this earlier. God could have sent a shining angel, say, Moses, like during Christ's birth with the shepherds in the field. Moses, I'm the angel Gabriel. I want to send you back. Nope. God could have given him crazy visions like the prophet Isaiah or Ezekiel. Nope. That's not what God did. God used the burning bush, which like I mentioned earlier, okay? What made the burning bush special wasn't that it was burning. It was because it wasn't burned up. God often uses the common things in our lives, and He turns it subtly uncommon to see if we are paying attention, if we are at our post. If we're not at our post, we can easily ignore the burning bush. It's just another burning bush. But Moses was doing what he was supposed to do. He was at his post, at his task, being faithful with what he's called to do. And in that moment, he saw, wait, that burning bush looks really weird. It's not burning up. I want to go and approach it. Okay? There's something profound about being faithful in the task that God's given you. Focus not on the exit. I'm going to tell you what to focus on. Point number 5. Focus on God's personal word for you. Verse 4, when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy ground. He said, I'm the God of your father, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. God called Moses by name. Personal name. He says, I am your God. I'm your father's God. I'm your ancestors' God. There is something about God calling you personally and seeking that personal touch from God. You know, when God speaks my name, when He calls me by my name, I know in my head that I'm not just one life out of trillions of life that have ever existed on this planet. I know that in my head. But when He calls me by my name, I feel like I'm in a different dimension. You know, we all want to seek comfort in this time, in the midst of uncertainty. I'm telling you, there's nothing more comforting than that the God of the universe knows you by name. You know, there are times in which I'm seeking comfort, I'm seeking direction from God. I want God to give me a word. I want God to tell me to go in this direction or this direction. And He shows up. I feel like He sits beside me, or I'm on the ground. He comes beside me. He doesn't say one word. But I know He knows me. His presence is with me. And I can walk out there with such comfort in my heart. I can walk out there encouraged. I walk out there, my heart is full. I don't know what direction I'm going, but I don't care because God knows me. Does that make sense? And I come out there and my friends or my wife be like, oh, you look so encouraged. What did the Lord say? He said nothing. It doesn't matter. I don't care because He's with me. He knows me by name. In this season of reset, this is what you focus on. You focus on the personal God who knows you by name. Finally, number 6. What do you do when you exit the reset? You build a monument. Building a monument. The purpose of the monument is so that we will not forget. Okay? It's a reminder of God's faithfulness, not just to ourselves, but to others. Check out what God said to Moses. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of Egyptians and bring them out of the land into a good and spacious land flowing with milk and honey. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. See, I'm a little embarrassed by this. I didn't know that Moses met God, burning bush. It's the same place later He will bring the Israelites by and give them the 10 Commandments, Mount Sinai. I didn't know that. I don't know if you knew. That was the same mountain. So when I was studying the scripture, my thought was, why did God want Moses to bring the Israelites back to Mount Sinai? Why not just go directly to the Promised Land? Why stop by Mount Sinai? I'm sure there's many different reasons for this, but the Lord told me it's because Mount Sinai is a monument to Moses. You know, one of mankind's biggest problem is that we forget. We forget what we learned yesterday. We forget the lessons from history. As followers of Jesus, we forget the lessons we learned from our reset. That's why we backslide. That's why we make the same mistakes over and over and over again. Am I talking to the right people? I don't know about you. I forget the lessons I learned, and I need reminders. So God gives us a secret weapon called monuments. Monuments help us remember these lessons so we won't backslide. To Moses, Mount Sinai is a monument. Imagine the emotions Moses felt when he went back to Mount Sinai. Now he's carrying millions of Israelites with him. Okay. Mount Sinai to him represents all his failures, all his disappointments, all his expectation he had for himself that was destroyed. It represents years and years of wondering, God, do you remember me? The tears he shed in disappointment, the fears. But Mount Sinai also represents when God meets him, when God shows his faithfulness, redeems him, restored him. So when he comes before Mount Sinai, it stirs up such emotion and passion in Moses' heart. But what about to all the Israelites? They look at Mount Sinai and they're thinking, if God will go through this journey with Moses, perhaps God will go through this journey with me also. That's what monuments do. In my season of pain, in my seasons of reset, after 4 years of that, I was ready for a new reset in my life. Okay? God saw it fit for me to exit my previous reset into the new reset. And this new reset was becoming a family man. I was getting married. And my wife, on my wedding day, many of you were there, she surprised me with something, which is really hard because I'm pretty sneaky. But she was able to surprise me. On my wedding day, she surprised me with a family crest. So put that picture up there. Highly recommend, if you don't have one, to create one with your spouse. This family crest was a symbol, was a picture of everything that my wife and I went through. It's a picture of our past. It's our journey. The pain, the sorrows, the fears. It's a picture of our past, but it's also a picture of our present. Okay, it's a picture of what God has done in our lives. But most importantly, it's a picture of where God has called us to go. Okay, it's a direction, it's a roadmap to where God has called us to go. And the most important part, this is a picture that God has been faithful in our life. It's a monument for us. And today, it's front and center in my living room. So every time anyone comes to my house, you are going to see, the first thing you're going to see coming to the door is that monument. And what happens is when I'm ministering to a young man, I'm encouraging him about the godly reset and telling him, hey, God has a plan for you. I know you feel like you're completely lost. You feel like you're useless. You feel like you got nothing going for you. But I'm telling you, look at that picture. Look at that crest. Look at that monument. If God can do that in my life, God can do it in your life too. When my wife is ministering to young ladies and through their hurts and pains, she can point to that crest and she said, look at that tree. That tree, that deep roots, that's what God's doing right now in you. He's putting deep roots in you so that one day you can flourish and become a tree in which other people can come and hide in its shade. When we're ministering to hurting couples who are fighting for their marriage, we can say, hey, look, God, Debbie and I went through junk and we had sins and hurts and pain in our lives, but God restored us. If God can restore us, He can restore you too. This crest is our monument. I want to encourage you, as you're exiting every set of reset that God's given you, make a monument to remind yourself. It doesn't have to be a crest. It doesn't have to be a statue, whatever you think a monument is. You know, my wife and some ladies recently went to the Wonder Woman conference. And when they came back, this is what they did. They went and they got Wonder Woman bracelets for themselves. Okay, a bunch of them got it. And my wife is like, can I get one of these? Of course, because she and I both know what we're doing. We're putting a monument, a marker to that. So whenever she looks at her bracelet, she reminds herself what God is doing. Okay, this is our secret weapon to remember. Okay, create monuments for yourself. God took Moses through the wilderness because one day He will guide them. Moses will guide people through the wilderness. One day, God is taking you through the wilderness, through the reset, because one day God is going to use you to guide people through the wilderness and through the reset. Think about it this way. This reset you're going through right now, or you're about to go through, or you're about to leave, is not for you. The purpose of this is never for you. The purpose of this is for other people. Okay, think about this. I think this is the most encouraging thing I can say today, is all the tears, the pain, the anxiety you are feeling, you have felt, you're about to feel, the sense of disorientation, lostness, confusion. Every tear you shed, none of that will be wasted. Not one tear will be wasted. Every single bit of pain and confusion you feel, one day will be used to encourage someone else. When I see a young man lost, confused, feels like they just take 10 steps backwards, I feel such compassion for that because I understand that. And I'm uniquely equipped because of my journey to minister to this young man. I can't think of anything more encouraging. No path of least resistance or no promise of comfort can keep me from walking down this path of reset, because I am energized that one day I will use this for God's kingdom and to help set other people free. What a privilege. I want to invite you guys, as you're going through this divine reset, to think about Moses, to think about all these men and women of God who God has gone through this reset, and say, hey, I want to go through the same thing, because one day I'm going to help others go through this. I want to maximize this experience for God's glory. I want to squeeze every drop of lesson and growth out of this reset so I can be used for God's purpose fully. You know, we as a church has been going through a reset of sorts in the last several months. This whole COVID-19 pandemic, we had to learn how to shut down and do online service and all these different things. And trust us, our leadership has gathered, and we are maximizing this opportunity to grow and to align ourselves with God's purpose. That's one of the reasons why starting next Sunday, we're going to switch to 3 services. Okay, I'm about to show this one video. Pastor Ron is going to share with us our vision to why we're going to 3 services, and we need some help from you guys. We are growing, so we need your help. So go ahead and show that video.
Good morning, Living Stones. As Pastor Andrew mentioned, we are going to be announcing an exciting new change beginning next Sunday, June the 7th. We're going to be adding a 3rd opportunity for Sunday morning worship. And so our schedule will be as follows. We're going to have an 8:30 service, a 10 o'clock service, and an 11:30 service, which I think is going to be very exciting. We're doing this for a couple of reasons, obviously. We've got a social distancing requirement that we're asked to follow, and we want to make sure that we do that, which means that we can't pack you in as much as we have in the past. And so we're adding that 3rd service to help accommodate that. But also, God is blessing us in the midst of this situation. We're continuing to see new families, new people joining us online, new friends that are coming to visit, and we just want to make room to accommodate that. So we need your help, and we need it in a couple of areas. First of all, our children's ministry is experiencing a lot of growth, a lot of new children that are coming to the church, and we want to make sure we love them well, disciple them well, teach them well. So we need you to do that, which involves a little bit of a change in our policy. If you are a parent and your children are enjoying the children's ministry here, we're now asking you to at least volunteer to be a part of that ministry on a limited basis at this point. If everybody does their part, no one's going to be overburdened or overwhelmed by the commitment. But we want you to get involved. In fact, we need you to get involved. You can sign up in the children's area. Let us know when you're free, what service you can serve at. That'll be a big help. The second area that we're growing in is our online presence. You probably have enjoyed, in fact, some of you are enjoying right now, this service online. We're trying to make that experience better and better with each passing week, which means we need more help on our production team. So if you'd like to help be a part of actually producing the service on Sunday morning, please stop in at our Connection Center, pick up an application, and Joel D will be following up with you on that particular area. But hey, we're moving forward together. It's an exciting time. We need your help to continue to advance the vision God's given us here. And we're just asking you to please lend a hand and help serve in one of these 2 important areas if you're not already serving somewhere. All right? Hey, Marion and I look forward to seeing you all next Sunday. So have an amazing week.
Hey there, church. We're very excited that you joined us today. Hope you enjoyed that amazing word and incredible worship. We really want to be connected to you, however. So if you could text the word new, if you are new, to this number right here, and we would love to know if you've given your life recently to the Lord, if you're looking for a home church, if you have any questions, and also leave comments below. We want to know how you appreciated the service today. Also, we are super thankful for all of you who are financially faithful, and you can continue to give if you follow our online prompts, if you want to give online, or you can bring your gifts into the church during office hours. But we just pray a blessing over you, and we thank you for helping to fulfill the vision of Living Stones as we continue to grow and reach God's people. Amen.